Question: how do you navigate the most important decisions of your life? How do you choose the professionals to whom you turn to in a crisis? How do you ensure that you're actually moving towards the outcome that you're looking for in these crucial times? Most people have no idea how to answer that question. But whether it's a legal challenge, a health issue, or a business decision, some of the best answers come in the form of knowing the right questions to ask. Whether you need the right lawyer, the right doctor, the right business partner, the right spouse, the right anything, first need the right answers. In order to get to the right answers, you got to know the right questions to ask. Enter the Right Questions Podcast. Welcome to the Right Questions Podcast, episode 2, where today we're going to talk about the power of the right questions, what that means, how you can access this power in all facets of life. Matter of fact, I'm going to give you an example where I can show you how to make your life better or how to change your life by using questions at home, in your relationships, at work, with your coworkers or your customers, and even in times of crisis. That's right, in times when the fit hits the shan. And we'll get into those 3 examples in just a minute. First, I just want to, like I said, thank you guys for showing up, ask you to like and subscribe. It helps this channel tremendously to be able to continue to produce content like this. But without further ado, let's begin. First, I want to ask you, close your eyes and think back to a phenomenal memory. Whatever comes to mind when I just said that. Think back, close your eyes to a phenomenal memory. Guarantee whatever you're thinking about, whether it was cutting high school with your friends or tucking your children in to bed yesterday evening, all of those memories are preceded by great questions. Whether it was asking your high school sweetheart to the prom, or deciding which college to go to, or what work you want to do for a living, who you want to spend your time around, how you want to spend your days. These are fundamental questions that you're asking yourself constantly to create the life that you want. So the more that you know how to control this process, the better your life is going to become. That's exactly what this podcast is all about. Specifically, where I have a lot of expertise to focus in on is how to use the power of right questions during crisis, times when you need the right lawyer, the right doctor, but also in the right relationships. I mean, let's be clear. Relationships boil down to communication, and there's a lot of ways to go about that. You can try to be direct with somebody, but the fact is, if you try to tell someone to do something, you're typically going to encounter resistance, counterforce, call it what you will. But if you ask a series of questions, or you're able to engage the person in such a way where they feel like they got to that conclusion you were looking to get on their own, not only did you just get what you wanted without the friction, but you've also driven accountability in the process where they think that they own that decision, and that's better for everybody. So again, we'll go through examples of this. Here are 3 stealthy ways to level up your life game that 1, no one is talking about, 2, easy to implement relatively, and 3, applicable to all areas, problems, and goals. Curious to know what it is? It's knowing how to use the right questions to ask. Again, welcome to another episode of the Right Questions Podcast. I am your host, Gregory, and I look forward to showing you 3 ways that knowing how to use the right questions will absolutely change your life. Let me give you an example. And by the way, to make sure that this example is applicable to your life, I'll give you 3 examples. 1 at home in your relationships on how you can use the questions to change things in your relationship. 2, 1 at work on the power of using the right questions can help there. And 3, an example in life during a crisis. That's right, in times when the fit hits the shan, on how knowing the right questions to ask during these crucial times will absolutely save your hind one day. So, first example, at home. Let's say you want your wife to do something. Perhaps she speaks to your family inappropriately, or doesn't, whatever it is. And you want to make sure that you approach this topic the proper way, because if you don't, she's going to become extremely defensive extremely quickly. So for example, if you say to her, honey, I really wish you wouldn't talk to my mother that way. Well, be prepared to duck and cover, because you've just set off an exploding bomb. Now, if you said something on the other hand of like, hey, let me ask you, how have I done when I interact with your parents or with your mom or with your dad? Assuming you have, right? And this is a real issue. And she says, oh, you're great. I love the way that you interact with my father or with my mother. You always make her feel so comfortable and blah, blah, blah. Got it. I want to do more of that. So what is it that I do when that happens that makes you think that? Now she starts describing the ways that you or that anyone really should act when dealing with the other relationship partner's family. At which point you could say to her, well, that's great. I love that feedback. And I think my family would love that too. So could I ask that you do the same thing when we're in the presence of my family? She should say, a loving partner would say something like, of course, honey, if it makes me happy and it makes my family happy, why wouldn't I want to be the same way with your family? Again, you don't always have to be direct and confrontational. Sometimes using the power of the right questions is the way to go. And you've just accomplished the same thing you would have without any of the friction. If you like this, well, there's also a way to use this at work, which I will show you in part 2. Here's part 2 of 3 stealthy ways to level up your life game. Knowing how to use a skill that basically nobody's talking about on the internet is super easy to implement once you master it, and is applicable to all areas, problems, and goals. The skill is using the right questions. So, previously, we talked about how to use the right questions in a relationship setting at home. This time, we're going to talk about how to use the power of the right questions with an example at work. I'll give you a real life example. You could be the boss or you could be the subordinate, but there are times where you're either trying to save face or strengthen the relationship. And one of the best ways to do that is by, instead of telling someone to do something, especially in a room full of people, give them a chance to select or elect to do or make the right option or do that thing on their own accord. So I'll give you an example. In my previous life, one of the things I used to do is teach surgeons how to do surgery. And that's all great, except here's the thing. I'm not a doctor. Now, while I was exceptionally trained in this one product or this one area of medicine, I may very well have known as much, maybe even more in certain aspects than they did. Let's be clear, I am no doctor. So me trying to tell a doctor what to do, believe me, not only doesn't sound well, but it actually offend the people that are in the room, like nurses and other people who are there to support him. So this is a delicate situation where instead of telling the doctor, hey doctor, I'm going to pull back that wire, as just an example, I'd say, doc, what do you think about pulling back that wire so we would have more support for the sheath? That gives him a chance. And oftentimes I would hear, you know what, that's a great idea, Greg. I was just about to do that, Greg, or whatever is appropriate. But ultimately he maintains or she maintains the control, the integrity, the face, and you get the outcome at work by using the right questions. You can do the same thing with any employee in any other setting where they're perhaps outside the bounds of where you'd like them to be optimally. Again, positioning it as a question isn't manipulative, it's empowering. Hopefully you can see how that's the case. Now, this is especially true when there's a crisis going on, when you have to, for example, pick the right doctor or pick the right lawyer. Part 3 of 3 stealthy ways to level up your life game by using the power of the right questions. In the previous 2 examples, we talked about one example at home with the relationship, another example at work. This time, the example is about life. When life is going to throw you curveballs, crises, crucial moments where you've got to make a decision rather quickly. Some of these decisions could be decisions on which lawyer to go to, which accountant to trust, which doctor to work with, what treatment to take. And so, one of the things that you want to be sure to do is do the homework. Whatever the scenario that you're in, whether it's a legal scenario or a health scenario, before you go in and speak with whomever it is that you're looking to put your faith in or who you're looking to work with, make sure that you've taught yourself enough to be able to ask intelligent questions. I mean, we're so lucky to live in this day and age where literally you're probably watching me on your phone right now and you can find 100 people online through you, wherever, that can help you understand whatever situation you're dealing with, whatever legal situation, whatever health question, whatever tax implications you're wondering about. You don't have to become the expert, by no means, but you should absolutely know enough to be dangerous. And with today's access to information at your fingertips, it's kind of hard to have the excuse. And there's all levels, all ways in which this information is presented. I get it. Some of this stuff is advanced or not in our typical wheelhouse, but you'll be surprised how much you can learn when you're in a crisis situation and when you have to. So highly encourage you to do the homework. That's one of the most important tips. And then that way you can ask the appropriate questions, which will reveal who you're dealing with as a professional and whether they're the right professional for you. As an example, if I'm going to be needing the services of a lawyer, one of the things I would do is figure out, well, in that area of law, who or what is most important for me to know, And I would have some questions that I would be ready, literally with pen and paper, to go in and speak with that lawyer so that when I have that initial consultation, or the same is true with the doctor's office visit, I make use of the time really well. And an example question in a crisis situation might be one of the most important questions with a lawyer is how much should I expect to pay in total for your services? This is one of the most avoidant questions that you'll find. Again, lawyers tend to not want to commit for a variety of reasons, which I can get into in another video, but that's an example of a very powerful question which you need to know to ask in times of crisis, in times where you need a lawyer. As an example, with a doctor, you might ask the question of what's the number one reason why a patient would choose your practice to be treated? Again, these are just two examples where knowing the right questions to ask will give you so much more information you deserve to have to make the right decisions, to have the right life. So there's a lot of people who have produced amazing content. If you want to look back, check out some videos from Patrick Bet-David at Valuetainment, Alex Hormozi, Layla. They all have great videos on how to ask or what questions or what makes great questions going back many years. So I'm not going to rehash all of that here. I do want to review some quick concepts just so that you know, because ultimately, the more specific the outcome that you're looking for, the more tailored your question approach has to be. That's the most important thing you need to know from this video. The more specific the outcome you're looking for, the more tailored your question approach needs to be. So, as an example, if you're trying to get the right lawyer, well, you got to figure out what questions are going to reveal whether or not the right lawyer is sitting before you. And then that might mean doing the homework on figuring out what those questions need to be. But ultimately, this is what it boils down to: using the power of the right questions in such a way to uncover information that you otherwise would not have had obtained. I can tell you that in my life, personally, every great memory that I have started with a great question. Some of the greatest brands that I've worked for began with me asking a question of a college professor who then pointed me to an accounting event, who then led to me sitting at a table with some of the most powerful people at this company, that then led to a series of other questions that then led to a job offer, that then led to a series of promotions, and you see where this is going, right? But the point is, asking the right questions will create the right life. So let me go on and give you a couple other examples. As I'd mentioned, we're going to talk about real quickly what types of questions are out there so that, again, when you're looking for a specific outcome, you know what tailored approach is best for what you need. Of course, there's open-ended questions. That's when you're looking for depth, when you want details. There's closed questions where you're looking for specificity or commitment. There's something called the 3Ds technique, which I'll go into later detail because there'll be a section in this actual podcast about using questions as a tool for discovery, whether that's in life, relationships, or anywhere else. But the 3Ds technique is covered in more detail. I promise you it's going to be super interesting. And it's something that lawyers, FBI agents, investigators use that is not known by very many. We'll talk about things like meandering, which is also another technique that's used by lawyers and doctors to basically get at the information that they need. And ultimately, there's also cornering or closing questions that are used by professionals and salespeople every day, right? So depending on the scenario that you're in, that will dictate what type of question structure you're going to look or what tailored approach you'll need to use in structuring your questions approach. Got it? Questions can also be used to prime people's behavior. There's a great movie, I forget what it's called, but I think it's with Will Smith and Margot Robbie. And basically they point out what priming is in a way that's hard to describe.
How did you do that?
Liu Wan-se, legendary gambler. He bets on everything, anything, huge cash bets all the time. Once the Bellagio put Bill Gates out of the high roller suite because Liu Wan was flying in. He is the perfect Vic.
How did you know who he was gonna pick?
We told him to. We've been telling him all day. From the moment he left his hotel room, we've been priming him, programming his subconscious. He's been seeing the number 55 all day long. On the elevator, in the lobby, even the stick pin on the doormat. Not only that, we loaded his route from the hotel to the stadium. He looks out the window, primers are everywhere. Now he doesn't see it, but he does. There's no getting around it.
Really cool movie, check it out. It's not Hitch, I forgot what it's called. It's like Hustle or Speed. But this movie is amazing in the sense that it shows the power of priming. And priming is basically getting a person to act or behave in a certain way or make certain decisions because of something that you put in their environment. And one of the fastest ways to do this is by asking questions that will then prime a person to view someone or something in a certain way. You know, nefariously speaking, I'm sure we all have that friend that has stirred up drama in every circle. You know, they always ask questions that you know are designed to turn a screw either inside of you or between you and someone else. And you feel this immediately when they start asking the question. You can't help but then carry that into your next interaction with whoever that question was about. That's a perfect example of priming. It's a technique that CIA agents actually discuss. There's a cool episode on impact theory with Tom Bilyeu where he actually interviews a CIA agent who kind of goes into this a little bit. Super interesting. I highly recommend you check that out as well. But to summarize for you, questions can be used to prime people's thinking. Priming people's thinking primes their behavior. With me? And again, these questions will get around that counterforce that we talked about before. That is human nature. Whenever someone is told to do something, they resist. Whenever someone is asked, they want to show, they want to provide the right answer. They want to get to the conclusion. And that's exactly what you use in your favor to get the conclusion you need. And I mean, heck, if we really want to talk about priming behavior, what are some things that the Dalai Lama, Buddha, and Jesus Christ have in common? These people have based entire philosophies on asking the right questions internally and externally into the world. So no greater example. Questions can also be used as a means of signaling intelligence. I mean, we've all had the experience where we're talking to somebody and we can tell whether it's because we're talking about a hobby that we like that not many people know, or whatever it might be, that the person we're talking to not only understands us, but understands the subject of what we're talking about based on the question that they asked in a given moment. So if you're a car guy, as an example, you might be talking about your brand new whatever, and the person you're talking to asks, what kind of turbo? Is it a single or is it a dual that you have on there, aftermarket or stock? And all of a sudden you know that this isn't a person that, this person at least has some level of intelligence and knowledge, and so it's a way of signaling that intelligence. And this can apply to any setting, right? Classroom, teacher's pet, for example. Of course, they signal by asking the right questions that they're following what the teacher had just tried to convey to the room. One of the ways we do this, whether we know it or not, we do this during dates. We'll ask questions of the other person that, first of all, or hopefully we're doing this, that are designed to engage them, but also we sort of want to demonstrate that we're intelligent. And of course, on job interviews, if you ask a question that shows not only do you understand the industry that you're applying for, but specifically the position you're in, and more likely the concerns that are in the recruiting manager's mind, and there's no better way to get the job. So I could teach you how to do that in other videos on how to specifically ask questions in a job interview that will signal intelligence to the interviewer that you know and that you're the right candidate for the job. On talking about the power of the right questions. And one other power is its power in creating relationships. You know, whether you're asking someone for help, even that simple action can actually create countless psychological studies have shown that that very process creates a bond, creates a deeper relationship. And so it's a simple way where there is a tremendous amount of power in asking the right question. And that right question could be a plea for help or advice. Similarly, when we're having conversations, earlier we talked about using the power of the right question as a way to signal intelligence. Well, there's also a way to use questions as a way to signal empathy, and that you understand what the person is talking to you about. You know, whether it's during a trying time, whether loss of a loved one, or what have you, the questions and the way that you ask these questions will signal to the person how deeply you empathize with them. And we'll have a whole series on videos where we set that up for you. And as I mentioned earlier, my personal background has been in both corporate investigations, audit, sales, CEO, and now I'm a strategist and coach. And so I can tell you, questions have always been a tool of discovery by the best, whether those are the best lawyers, the best CIA agents, the best investigators, the best doctors, all of them use questions as their number one tool of discovery. And in using this as a tool of discovery, questions are actually the best investigative tool known to man. However, to be effective, it requires techniques, skills, strategies, similar to playing chess. And the best investigators, the best influencers, the best leaders, the best anyone knows. As an example, one technique that's often used is called the 3Ds, or the 3D technique. And what's the 3Ds? Well, the 3Ds is disarm, distract, and divulge. So the first series of questions that you set up is intended to disarm the person. These will typically be no-brainer questions like, what's your date of birth? What's your name? The next series of questions will be to distract the person. These questions engage the mind a little bit, but they don't put you on guard, such as, what do you do for a living? How long have you lived at your current address? Then they'll sneak in the third question after this series of first two, when your mind has already been disarmed, now distracted, and then they're hoping to get you to divulge whatever information they're really after. You'll see this common pattern, and this is why it's done, because they're hoping not just to get the truth out of you, but the unprepared answer. They know that, and they go right into the question. You're more than likely ready to push out a prepared answer, but if perhaps they get your mind disarmed, distracted, you'll then divulge. Another similar technique is called meandering. This is where they'll go through a series of questions on one subject, perhaps in the 3D format, then bounce to another subject, again in the 3D format, and then come back to the original subject in the hopes that the confusion will throw you off balance, again, get you to provide more unprepared answers. And by the way, these are skills and techniques you can use right back on the professionals themselves, which we'll talk about in the next podcast, all about managing the pros like a pro. Another tool when you're asking questions is actually the use of silence. Sometimes just because you ask the question, even in relationships or on the job or with your customers, you don't often actually get the answer. So use silence. Wait. Allow the silence to draw the response out of them. And if it doesn't, reassert the question again and use silence. Again, these are techniques that we'll go through in later podcasts and videos on how to get the answers that you need. Another approach might be assumptions or construct testing, where basically you're creating a series of constructs or assumptions and asking the other individual to dispute the construct you're creating. So once again, all exceptional leaders, all exceptional doctors, all exceptional investigators, all exceptional influencers have learned how to master the power of the right questions. I know you can do it too. And think forward to your next opportunity where you're going to use the power of the right questions to create the memory you'll think of the next time someone asks you to close your eyes and think of a great memory. Hope you enjoyed this podcast. I certainly enjoyed being with you guys. Please like and subscribe again, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon. Take care. So again, next time that you have a crucial situation come up, next time, God forbid, you have a crisis, God forbid you have a situation come up where you need the help of a doctor or a lawyer or some major professional, make sure you remember us, the right questions. If I can help you in any way, please don't hesitate to reach out. Find us on all of our socials, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon. Take care. So, hey guys, I hope you found this content helpful. If so, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. It helps us tremendously to continue to be able to bring you valuable content just like this. Check out our other videos as well, and we'll look forward to seeing you there.